euro loonie, this pair has been good to us. It's one of the most recent trades we've taken. It was one of those trades we were very patient about. We had a number of levels that we were watching in terms of waiting for that correction into the wave and reaching that swing short entry. And we're finally getting that follow through. So I want to cover a few of the levels that we're talking about right now because we've hit our first profit target. So this trade now is absolutely zero on the risk. In other words, our short entry zone between 49.20 and 49.50, and I have a very small trade on here, very small trade in terms of just 4 lots. I mean, I really didn't pile in here, but the cool thing is it's followed through now. So what we have to remember is even if you don't realize a profit, in terms of realizing, meaning you don't take, let me zoom in just a little bit more here, you don't take this level here, the 48.25 off the table. Even if you don't realize that, you must ratchet from the POV up here to a break even. So if you're in from 49.50, I'd like you to be at, say, 49.60, 49.55. If you didn't take that, you're in from 49.20. I want you to be in around 49.25, 49.30. In other words, yes, technically there is a small loss involved if the market does snap back up to that level, but it's very, very small. And the idea here is that you do take a little something off the table at 48.25, that non-negotiable, and at that point you begin the whole transition from POV to BE. Now you'll notice there's actually 5 levels. 4 levels. 4 levels, 3 of which are optional, 1 is non-negotiable. So 48.50 we talked about yesterday in the chat room, that a lot of you are thinking, you know what, I want to go ahead and start my ratcheting process now, and that's fine. You know, that's absolutely fine, because this way you've gone from your POV, your risk-based stop loss, and you've moved it down to a break even, and you realize a profit. For those of you that waited for our non-negotiable at 48.25, you got an extra 25 pips. For those of you that have been waiting for this plus 47.80, okay, there's another 45 pips. So we are now at least 1, if not arguably 3 profit targets into our trade, which means what? You do have now the choice to go to a trailing. So a break even would mean that there's still a very, very, very small loss involved, but you've protected yourself. Ideally, you've taken some of the house money, and all you'd be giving back is basically unrealized profit. But there's that small risk. You go to a trailing, no matter what happens, you're keeping a certain amount of house money. So for those of you that are ready for that trailing, you could be down, instead of at 49.55, you could be down at, say, 48.55. Okay, so you could actually transition to a trailing if you'd like. Now, for those of you that are wondering, all right, and I hope some of you are wondering this right now, am I allowed to do this? When I say allowed, I mean I want you to start thinking strategically about price movement ranges. If you want to manage it hour to hour, you know, a big part of that's going to be looking at the economic calendar, anything that could affect the euro or the loonie. Of course, don't forget the dollar could affect both. And then I want you to look at the hourly price movement range. So you can do that pretty easily. And let's do that right now. So you can manage this hour to hour, giving this market about anywhere from 40 to almost 60 pips, depending upon the hot zone. That's on the high end. Okay, without any hot zones hitting the euro, the loonie, or the US dollar, you'll probably operate in around the 30-ish area. Okay, mid-20s to say mid-30s. Now, if you want to back off by an entire daily pip movement range, on a day like today, where we don't really have anything significant coming out of Europe, the U.S., or Canada, again, we're talking about the Euro-Loonie specifically, how much can you back off by? The average to the low is probably fine. Okay, so if you want to back off by today's average, you need at least a 100 pip cushion. So somewhere between 75 to 100 pips. Now, do you have 75 to 100 pips from where we are right now to where I mentioned you could trail to with 48.55? You're on the, if you're going with the lower end of PMR, daily PMR, you're probably right there on the cusp. Okay, right there on the edge. So if you wanted to, if I've mentioned 48.55 is fine, and I know nobody here needs to do this via calculator, but I just want to show you what I'm talking about. So you know that you have 75 to 100 pips, right? And then I mentioned 48.55, and then I'll subtract the current price, which is 47.83, and that gives you 72. So that's what I mean. You could be on the low end of daily PMR, which is not invalid. I mean, that's not a bad idea. Okay, that's reasonable. So you'll notice 48.50 not only is a previous support level and now then looking forward to resistance level, it was an optional exit in terms of a profit target. And if you want a trailing stop to just beyond that, you're pretty much exactly where you want to be, because you technically be up at, say, 48.60 or 48.55, right? And then you look at current prices. So it's definitely not something that is smothering the trade if that's the way you want to go ahead and move to a trailing. And the auto chartist says, yeah, it'll work. That's all right. You're on the average to the low, because we don't have anything that's going to push us likely north of the average, the band across this Tuesday bar. So that's where we are right now on that really nice winner in the euro versus the loonie. Ratchet your stop loss, but do not smother this thing, and do not allow the house to touch your capital. We're completely in a situation where we are just playing with house money. Okay, I know a lot of you want a piece of this, the Euro Aussie, and we're going to talk about the volatility we saw coming out of yesterday's Asian session by way of the NAB business confidence and CPI. Obviously, the Euro weakness story is a big part of this, but if the Euro weakness story is now met with an Aussie strength story, now we're talking about this pair firing on both cylinders. That's exactly where we like to be, in a situation where we can fire on both cylinders. So we're going to actually now recalibrate Euro Aussie. We'll take a look at Euro Pound as well, and just kind of do a general Euro scan to see where there may be DB, and then of course some proximity to allow us to get a piece of this trade. And I do absolutely want to sell Euro, but we got to wait for those corrections. So let's go ahead and move on to that Euro scan and recalibrating. In other words, I'm going to give you fresh levels to go ahead and park your limit orders and be more anticipatory of that potential catch the wick situation. And by the way, when could that happen? Likely not today. Euro Aussie could have an opportunity tonight with the Westpac at 8:30 p.m. Okay, but you'll see most of today and tomorrow is going to be about Aussie in terms of the Euro Aussie. Then getting into Thursday and then Friday, it's not even Euro necessarily that's going to be driving the movement. It's actually going to be the U.S. dollar. So we could have some Euro opportunities, but by way of USD volatility.